Well, thank you everyone for coming. I'm Rob Fix. I'm the Executive Director of the Port of Bellingham. Bellingham International Airport is part of the port, and we welcome you all to our new airport. This part of the terminal opened up in about 2014. It's about 3 times the size of the former terminal. Our former airport terminal was built to handle somewhere between 40 and 80,000 passengers a year. I think at its peak it did about 400,000 passengers. This terminal is designed to handle about 800, but based on what we were able to get through the other one, we could probably get a couple million through here, huh? We're very proud of the terminal. The airlines that have seen this and know the business think we did a great job. We did a good job controlling our costs, which airlines think is important because they ultimately pay the price of a terminal. And they're very complimentary about how this came in on time and under budget. So that's due to the incredible work of the port staff and the contractors that we worked with. I'm not sure if you folks are aware, but the contractor on this project was Dawson, which is a local company, and we love to see local companies get that type of work. But that's not why we're here today. We're here today to talk about the first piece of public art, which happens to be a Coast Salish piece. And we're going to do some introductions here. The first person that's going to talk to you today is the current Port Commission President, which is Commissioner Mike McCauley. So I'm going to ask Mike McCauley to come up and say a few words to you if he's around here somewhere.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you folks for clapping before I even said anything. Today is, for me, a pretty cool day. I got most of the day off, so that's a good start. But secondarily, to see all of the people in this room right now is really amazing. This is probably one of the most fantastic opportunities that folks are going to have to see some local art. And like Rob said, we could probably get a couple of million people through this terminal. And what I really think is amazing is that when we have something like this out in the public, oftentimes it gets lost. But here, we're literally going to be able to show this to millions of people in the future. And that's pretty amazing. So this is just a small piece of showing of our First Nations influence and history here, both on land and on the sea. And Felix has shared with us a very important story. But more importantly, I think he's crafted a story that people are going to see in the future. And that's going to be pretty much all I want to say, because the story that you're going to hear is far more important than anything I could say today. So I want to say thank you to everybody who did show up. Thanks to the folks that put this all together, and especially thank you to our local artist Felix for all the work that he put into this beautiful piece.
Thank you, Mike. This all kind of came about because I approached Tribal Chairman Tim Ballou about putting a native piece of artwork in our terminal here, and he introduced me to Felix and to Wendy Schurer. Wendy is formerly with the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association. I don't know how formally it is because she's still very active on them, but I believe she used to chair the board. She's the originator of this piece of art because Nooksack Salmon Enhancement is the one that originally contracted with Felix to do the artwork, and they did the original fundraising that came up with at least half, probably a little over half of the dollars required to get the job done. So I'd like to introduce you to Wendy. I don't see her right now, but I know she's right in front. I do need glasses, don't I? Wendy Schurer.
And I lost my reading glasses, but I did this in 16-point font. So my name is Wendy Schurer, and I'm Nana to my grandkids, and I'm salmon lady to the kids that I teach about salmon life cycle in elementary schools. Michael, oh, awesome. Are those mine? Yeah, oh good. But yesterday we had our 25th anniversary party at the ferry terminal down at another port building down in Fairhaven. And it was great that we have these public venues to celebrate our community, the diversity of people, artwork, as well as getting the job done about the environment. And I'm really happy to be here today because I really love salmon, I really love cedar. And fish grow on trees, if you didn't know that we, working with Nooksack Salmon Enhancement for all the years since I've been working with them since 1985, but thinking about all the work we do with salmon recovery, trying to recover our runs is so hard. We didn't see as many fish as much as we did see trees. We plant trees. So cedar trees are very important to our community for the millennia since the Ice Age, and these cedar trees have evolved here with the salmon, with the people, the First Nations people here. And I'm so happy to be here today. It's almost this kind of a spiritual event to see the collaboration and cooperation that has gone into this project with Felix. And so I'm going to read just a few comments that I prepared today. And thank you for finding my glasses. So on behalf of the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association, I wanted to thank the community members from the Port of Bellingham and the Lummi Nation, and all the donors and friends who contributed their support to make this wonderful story pole happen. So many of the people here were donors, they were supporters, and we had many other foundations that were part of the funding of this project initially. Thank you, members of the Lummi Nation who share your ancestral homelands with us in what now is the city of Bellingham and the Bellingham International Airport. The human, animal, and abstract imagery carved in this old-growth cedar tree that you'll see soon demonstrates the nature of Felix's deep understanding of our salmon crisis. Felix has blended his native tradition, telling a contemporary story for us as he creatively provides us, our larger community, with a cultural information through his story pole sculpture. Felix is a Lummi carver committed to bringing back true, straight Salish work. Felix, with carver Scott Jensen, restored the Centennial Pole, a treasured story pole that is in front of the Whatcom County Courthouse. He has been a force in the revival of the carving traditional canoes. His work is featured in the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian in the Other Washington, and in the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. These are some of the world's greatest museums. Felix has researched traditional carving in Washington, D.C., in New York, here, and is part of a book that was really recently written about Frank Allaire and his carving. Felix's carvings have been purchased by several art collectors locally and nationally. We're so happy to have the maquette here, which is the model. And this model Felix showed me in 2008, and he said, can we have this maybe at the Maritime Heritage Park? And we tried to get it there, and it just didn't work out, but he kept carving it, and he can tell you the story of this log that turned into this beautiful sculpture pretty soon. So I just want to say thank you, Felix, for your gift to us. It takes a whole village, a whole watershed, a whole Salish Sea community to work together to bring back our salmon. Thank you for sharing your art and helping to pass your powerful story to travelers at this airport. I hope that this story teaches us all to work harder to both collaborate and cooperate better today in the future on behalf of the salmon and our children. And I just wanted to end my little talk with a quote, and it was so wonderful to be on Indian Street when they took down the signs and put Billy Frank Jr. name on Indian Street. So thank you, Bellingham. A lot of people here from the city of Bellingham, and Tim Douglas, former mayor, I just saw come in, and that was pretty historic. So Billy Frank went to jail 50 times for salmon, and that's pretty committed. And so I want to give a quote, one of my favorite quotes from Billy Frank Jr. He said, I don't believe in magic. I believe in the sun and the stars, the water, the tides, the floods, the owls, the hawks flying, the river running, the wind talking. They're the measurements. They tell us how healthy things are, how healthy we are, because we and they are the same. That is what I believe in. That was for Billy Frank Jr. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Felix Solomon. So let's welcome Felix.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. It's a pretty big event, you know, to have a piece of work here at the Bellingham Airport. To have something such a good story to be passed on, and to be able to be the one to receive this story and to be able to pass it on. You never know what they're going to do in this art form is too. This is the kind of work you're going to do, or where it's going to end up. So, okay. But you know, like Wendy said, it was a project that was a long time coming. It was started back in 2008 in an idea form, and it started in fundraising, and it gathered from there, and it was a story that actually evolved from a serpent, a snake that crawled up to me in my backyard. At the same time, I was doing this in 2007, 2008. I was running my small little restaurant that I had on the Lummi Reservation, and I served fresh fish all the time. And it was really tough for us to get fresh fish here on our own river, our own reservation, and even our own country. I mean, we had to have people come down from Canada, our relations that fished the Fraser River, to bring us fish. And at the time the story was brought to me, I was in my backyard, and this snake crawled up to me, and he looked at me, and I wanted him to get away from me. I mean, I don't like snakes to begin with, but he sat there right next to me, and he was looking at me, and I wanted him just to leave. I didn't know why he was there, and pretty soon he crawled away. And as he was crawling away, this story of how tough of a time we're having to put salmon on our table was planted inside of me. So that's when I started carving the maquette. I mean, I always wanted to I carved a snake before, but this snake had meaning. This serpent had meaning, so I started to carve this maquette. And at the same time, I was doing research on old shovel-nose canoes. It was the start of my shovel-nose canoe research through the Watka Museum and the Ford Foundation. I got a research grant to do research on the old river canoes. So the canoe had to be on the other side of the snake on this piece of work. And it was an evolving story that came to in my mind and in my heart that had to be told. And you know, then we'll jump up a little bit ahead when Wendy Scherer was looking for some public art. She was looking for public art at the Maritime Heritage Park. So I wasn't even done carving this piece. I was still carving it. And I showed it to her and told her the story. And she loved the idea. So that started the big piece of work. We did fundraising to buy a log back in 2008. And we bought the log, and then you know, it just went on for a long time with small fundraisers and never getting any big fundraising going. So it took a long time, you know, jump all the way up to this past year when Tim Ballou brought Rob Fix to my studio, and they were looking for their first piece of Salish art, and they wanted it done by a local artist. So they come to my studio, and I had this partially carved. Just the base partially carved, none of the fish or the two guys in the canoe, and so I mean, I said we could probably put this in the airport But, I didn't know because Nooksack Salmon Enhancement was getting it at the same time, so we had to juggle things around. But as long as it was put in here, and we gave everybody credit that donated to the project, through all the fundraising, then it was okay. So that's all the names that you see behind the brochure. And I'm sure we forgot some, and we apologize if we forgot people, but there was a lot of people that made this project happen. It wasn't just a one person show, It was a lot of people wanted to see this work done. So that's a little bit of history of how this piece got here. It was initially for the Maritime Heritage Park down below the museum, but now it's going to be set here in the airport, and it'll be indoors, and it'll be a lot safer, and a lot more people will see it. So I'm really happy that it ended up here. But this is the story. This is us as Lummico Salish people in our shovel-nosed canoe in the river. We're going after the salmon with a traditional gaff hook, fish hook. At the same time, the serpent's going after the salmon, and he's got his mouth on the salmon. And in this story, the serpent represents everything that's making it tough for us to put salmon on the table. And in my own personal opinion and my own life experience, it's the poorly regulated Washington State fisheries right from the very start, from the early 1900s. They would catch fish. You see pictures in the museum. I see pictures while I was doing research of just stacks and stacks of salmon. They'd catch them and they'd canneries, so they would just can as much as they could before the fish would go to waste. When they went to waste, they would just push them back into the Bellingham Bay. So, with that was way too much waste in my mind. And then there's three things that I'm expressing that make it hard, and those are just three things that come up in my own mind. And then the logging operations that clear cut our mountains, so our spawning channels have no more shade. It makes it impossible for our salmon to spawn. And then the farmers who's over fertilized their fields, and it all seeps into the Nooksack watershed. And it's not just the Nooksack watershed, it's all the rivers, because farms are up and down all the rivers. And all that extra fertilization in the waters created new kinds of algae in the water, and it's just made it really, really hard. It's a new kind of pollution. So those are the three things that come to my mind that I want to say that are making it tough for us to put salmon on the table. And then you come down to the diamonds on all four corners. You see the net carved below the salmon. That represents our commercialization of our fish. Once they had a dollar amount put on them, we jump up into the Judge Bolt decision, the 1974 Judge Bolt decision, when the Washington State allotment went 50% for the natives and 50% for the non-natives. At that point, we fished our fish almost to extinction. So, in this story, I want everybody that fished to be responsible for the deterioration of our fish, because it's not one side or the other. It's everybody that fished, everybody that consumed fish. And in my mind, it kind of falls back on the poorly regulated state fisheries, because there wasn't a big limit put on our fish. And I'm responsible too, because I'm a commercial fisherman. So that's what brings this to mind, is how tough of a time we're having to put salmon on the table. And the name of the sculpture is called It's Mine, because everybody thought the salmon was mine and they could do with what they want with it. So that's the story of It's Mine. It's going to be here at the Bellingham Airport, and I'm really proud to have the first piece of artwork here. And I'm so proud to see such a big group of people come and honor this. It really makes my heart feel good. I've asked Cliff Calty to come say a few words on behalf of our Salish partners. our salmon. He's a former tribal chairman.
Thank you, Felix. It's a wonderful day. Want to thank you for the great work that you provided and all of the artwork that you provided. You know, I'm familiar with the shovel-nosed canoe that you were doing that work a few years ago, and seeing a lot of his work, and it's very beautiful. Yeah, this artwork, you know, it really is powerful, because it represents who we are as Indian people, and our traditions, our culture, our shellangin, our way of life. Salmon is so important. You know, we have to honor and respect the salmon. It provided for our peoples, their nourishment. And you know, there's a lot of good things and bad things that happened over the years for the salmon. There's nobody that's speaking for the salmon. You know, I've been a lifetime fisherman along with Felix and a lot of other ones that I see here in the room, and the other ones that couldn't make it here today. A lot of environmental things. Earlier, you know, the diamonds, that really has an important role, because it's the commercialization of the salmon, put a price tag on that salmon. So we have to think about that also. There's a lot of our tribal members that don't even know what it's like to fish anymore, because the salmon runs have depleted. And as Felix is saying, it's, you know, hard to put food on the table, or put the salmon on the table. You know, my wife and I, she's right back here. You know, she was just saying just a few months ago, she goes, we need to have some more fish for dinner, put that back into our diet. And I'm wondering to myself, why don't we have fish? And I got to remind myself and say, oh yeah, the fish has some problems. We have some problems that we need to fix. We as humans need to fix some of these problems in the environment, ecosystem. A lot of things have happened over the years. I can remember the first El Nino cycle that came here back in the early 80s. And now we have other things that are happening, that have been happening, and we're just now waking up to it, about the climate change, those impacts. But I could see, you know, just looking at this, and I know it's for me when I think about this, and you know, it means a lot of different things about the serpent and what that represents, the challenges for the salmon. The salmon is trying, you know, the people are trying to capture the salmon to provide for themselves and their people and their children, and the serpent fighting over the same one. I know our ancestors are with us today. I can feel it. But I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I just want to thank Felix again. Hands up to Felix. And thank the Port of Bellingham and Nooksack Sound Enhancement, all of the donors and ones that had their hands, you know, in to help make this reality. So I just want to thank you for asking me to come up and say a few words.